Yesterday we stopped at verse number 35 of Surah Yasin Sharif, in which, after the example of the people of Antakya and the Shahada of Habib al-Najjar and the destruction of the disbelievers of Antakya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned a sign from amongst the signs of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that was the sign of the barren land. And we heard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the barren land as a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that although the land is barren, yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings out growth and produce from it. And specifically, the palm date tree is mentioned and the grapes are mentioned. And as we all know that in the desert land of the Arab world, these plants are quite common. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. So Subhan الذي, Subhan is the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means that Allah is munazzah an kulli aib or an kulli su. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from all faults and all errors. And this is the tasbih, and what it means is sabbih subhanallah. That's what it means. It means say the tasbih of Allah, which is subhanallah. So this is mentioned in order to express that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from shirk, is free from any partner. And because after seeing the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence around themselves, in the very earth that they live on and from which they eat and drink, yet they still commit shirk, so upon that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Subhanalladhi. Subhan is He is pure and transcendent. Alladhi khalaqa al-azwaja kullaha, the one who created all the different types. Azwaj is the plural of zawj, and zawj means sinf. Here it means asnaf. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all the different types of creatures that you see. Mimma tumbitul ard, from that which the earth grows, from that which comes out of the earth, yani the plants, the vegetation, the fruits, etc. Wa min anfusihim, and from themselves, yani the children, the offspring, the male and the female. وَمِمَّا لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, and from that which they do not know. Yani there are so many different creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that exist, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, that man has not yet seen them all. Man does not know all the different creatures. They are still discovering more and more different types of creatures that live in the water, that live in the earth, that live in the skies. It's all more, they are discovering more as we move further in time. So, one tafseer of this is that here the word azwaj specifically means pairs. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created pairs in everything. Everything has a pair. There are two. Everything is in twos. And that would refer to the male and the female. And like that in botany as well, they bring the male and the female together to help the plants grow better. And this is the dhikr of the makan, yani the earth that we are in. And in Surah Baqarah, when we mention the descending of Sayyiduna Adam alayhi salam from Jannah to the earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ وَلَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ مُسْتَقَرٌّ وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَى حِينٍ. That in the earth for you is a place of stay. وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَى حِينٍ, and provision for a specific time. That's mentioned there. So that is the earth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned here, that this is a sign of the power of Allah and the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this earth is the mustaqar for humans. And there is no point wasting money trying to find another planet to live on. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear, okay, this is the mustaqar, and here we have mata' ilahin. We have provision for a certain period of time, and after this will be the day of judgment. So this is the earth, and that's the makan that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned here. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the believers and to the specifically to the disbelievers, expresses that Allah has created this makan for you and provided you with all this provision and all these different types of creatures, and you should be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and accept faith. And after mentioning the makan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the zaman. وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ اللَّيْلِ, and a sign for them is the night. نَسْلَخُ مِنْهُ النَّهَارِ, we remove from it the day. We remove from it the day. And naslahu gives the idea of pulling off, like someone's clothing being pulled off their body. So وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ اللَّيْلِ, and for them is a sign, for them the night is a sign. نَسْلَخُ مِنْهُ النَّهَارِ, we remove from it the day. فَإِذَا هُمْ مُظْلِمُونَ, then they are in darkness. So what does that mean? What that tells us is the asl, the origin is darkness. And then came the light. Because here, this verse shows to us that the day and the night, or the day in comparison to the night, is like clothing on the body. If you clothe something that is completely dark and black, and you place white clothing on it, or a white piece of material on it, and then you pull that material off, then all you're left with is darkness. So that is what the day and night is. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed us is that the darkness is the essence, and the light came after. So وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ اللَّيْلِ نَسْلَخُ مِنْهُ النَّهَارِ فَإِذَا هُمْ مُظْلِمُونَ. And the night and the day are of course a sign for the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for humans, and the benefits of the day and the benefits of the night are many. They are many. The night has been made for rest, the day has been made for work, the rest, even sleep, the great benefits of sleeping, we should all be aware of them, and the benefits of working in the daytime, moving your body, exercising the muscles and the bones, the joints that you have to move about. All the benefits of that come with the night and the day, and that's what's mentioned here. وَالشَّمْسِ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا, and this is expanding on the night and the day. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا, and the sign of the night and the day, part of it is the sun. وَالشَّمْسِ تَجْرِي, and tajri, jara yajri means to run. It runs. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا, for its mustaqar is a fixed place. And here the mufassirin say that either this means that it will continue running لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا until the day of judgment, when the hukum comes that you must stop now and rise from the other side. So it will turn around. So وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا, the sun continuously encircles and does tawaf of the earth. And that's what the sun does, and it won't stop. It moves in its fixed circle. It continues that, and the sun, with all its glory, the size of the sun in comparison to the earth, the distance of the sun, the heat of the sun, all of these things are signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a perfect system for us in this world, that the sun continuously does its work without any disturbance. And all of this order in this world, the order of the way the sun moves, is all indicating the existence of a controller, one who controls it, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that the sun moving, that has been moving since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it the hukum to move and encircle and do tawaf of the earth, it has been doing that without any disobedience to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have been seeing night and day, night and day, night and day. ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. That is the taqdeer, yani the ordainment, the hukum, the command of the dominant Al-Aziz Al-Alim, the all-knower. وَالْقَمَرِ, and the moon. قَدَّرْنَاهُ, we have fixed for it manazil, phases. حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ, until it returns to an old date palm stalk, one that has dried and slightly curved. So that's what happens to the moon. So the moon has phases, and there are 28 phases, sometimes 29 or 30 phases of the moon. And either it appears for 28 days, or sometimes it appears for 29 days. And it appears, or sometimes it hides for 2 days, or sometimes it hides for 1 day throughout the month. So وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلَ حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ, until it becomes like a bow. لَا الشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا أَن تُدْرِكَ الْقَمَرَ. It is not for the sun, yani the sun has not been given the permission by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَن تُدْرِكَ الْقَمَرَ, that it beats the moon. Yani when the moon is out, it is night. It is not for the sun to appear during the time of the moon. And it cannot take over the time of the night and appear in the night time. The sun doesn't do that. It has a fixed time when it's day. Whom I have made the ashraf of the creation, yani the most noble of all creations, yet you are disobedient. Yet you disobey the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You commit shirk and partner idols with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكُلٌّ فِي فَلَكِ يَسْبَحُونَ, and everything in the atmosphere is swimming. وَآيَةٌ and the zaman that we are. So Makan and Zaman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us, and this is a great sign. And there is other verses of the Quran that talk about the sun and the moon. One specific verse where the يسألونك عن الأهلة. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down that قل, tell them هي مواقيت للناس والحج, that the moon and the phases of the moon are for you to recognize time, when the month has ended, when the month has begun. Phases, but the phases differ throughout the month. So for that reason, we are unable to calculate exactly when it will be visible, when it will not be visible. Although science or astronomy has got very close, but it's not always accurate. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ أَنَّا حَمَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ فِي الْفُلْكِ الْمَشْحُونِ. And a sign for them is that we certainly carried, ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ, their offspring, their progeny. Dhurriya is used for the offspring, the furu'. And the ajdad, not the ajdad. The ajdad are the ones who came before, the usul. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ أَنَّا حَمَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ فِي الْفُلْكِ الْمَشْحُونِ. And a sign for them is that we carried them, yani we carried their progeny, their offspring, fil fulkil mashhoon, in the ship that was running on the water, that ran on the water. This, the tafseer of this, the mufassirin have said that this is referring to the ship of Sayyiduna Nuh alayhi salam, because the Arabs, they were aware of the ship of Sayyiduna Nuh alayhi salam, and they all believed that a flood came and Nuh alayhi salam saved the people that remain today, and everyone that exists are the offspring of those who were in that ship. So they believed that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that as a sign for them. وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ أَنَّا حَمَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ فِي الْفُلْكِ الْمَشْحُونِ. It is a sign that when the water came and it drowned everything, yet this one ship remained, and it remained on the surface of water. It didn't sink. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept those people alive. So why does it say ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ, your offspring? So Imam Fakhruddin Razi in his tafsir says that maybe the reason for mentioning ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ is because they have not accepted Iman, the mushrikeen of Makkah. They have not accepted Iman. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that those who come from their offspring, they will accept Iman. So to give them honor, and those who accept faith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that it is a sign for them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carried their offspring in the loins of those who were there in the boat of Sayyiduna, or the ship of Sayyiduna Nuh alayhi salam. They were carried in that fulke mashhoon. وَخَلَقْنَا لَهُم مِّن مِثْلِهِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, and we created for them like it, like the boat and the ship of Sayyiduna Nuh alayhi salam, we created more for you. Ma yarkabun, that which you ride. Yani when we ride on water in the sea or in the rivers, we ride on we ride on ships and boats. This is also a sign of the existence of Allah and the gracefulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He gave us a system through which we can float on water and ride on water, which is buoyancy. Is it buoyancy? Buoyancy, where the density of the object on the water and the density of the water, the surface that's displaced of the water, if the density of the object that's come into the water is less than the density of that water which is displaced, then it will float. So this system Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, and He allowed us to move from one place to the other through water. So that's what's mentioned here. وَخَلَقْنَا لَهُم مِّن مِّثْلِهِ مَا يَرْكَبُونَ, and we created for them like the ship and boat of Sayyiduna Nuh alayhi salam, that which now they are riding upon. And although there is a clear system when it will drown, when it will not drown, following the formula, I'm not sure what it's called, the Archimedes law or something like that, Archimedes law. It's a system that Allah has made. You follow the law, your form of transport or object that you put on the water should float. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّ شَاء, that although I have created all of this for you, a sign for you is that if we intend, وَإِنَّ شَاء, if we will, نُغْرِقْهُمْ, we drown them. Even though you've looked at the density of the ship or the boat, the object, you've looked at the amount of space, the surface that it will ride on the water, you've done all your calculations and you've followed the system. But remember that everything is under the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِنَّ نَشَأْ نُغْرِقْهُمْ, and if we will, then we shall drown it. فَلَا صَرِيخَ لَهُمْ, there will be no one to answer their screams and their calls. وَلَا هُمْ يُنْقَذُونَ, and they will not be saved. Like the Titanic. They had all their best engineers. They were absolute certain that this is not going to fail, yet it failed. And there was no one there to answer their call. There was no one there to save them. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, it is Allah who has created this system. If Allah wills, then He may drown it, even though you followed the law of nature. Illa rahmatan minna, but by the mercy from us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that although you follow this system and you've done your calculations and your engineering and you are traveling on water, don't think that you will not drown. It is but the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Illa rahmatan minna, it is the mercy from us that we allow you to continue and remain alive, wa mata'an ila heen, and give you provision until a specific period of time, until your life. And after that, you will leave this world. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ اتَّقُوا مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ, and when it is said to them, fear that which is in front of you, all these signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, the earth, the sun, the moon, the night, the day, وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ, and the sign of Sayyiduna Nuh alayhi salam, where everything drowned, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept Sayyiduna Nuh alayhi salam and the rest, they remained afloat. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ, perhaps you will find the mercy of Allah, perhaps Allah will be merciful towards you. وَمَا تَأْتِيهِم مِّنْ آيَةٍ, and no sign has come to them, مِّنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ, from the signs of their sustainer, their Rabb, إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ, but that they have always turned away. They've always turned away. The disbelievers have turned away. So when it is said to them to fear that which is before you and what is behind you, perhaps you will find mercy, but what happens? They turn away. And like that, every sign that comes to them or they become aware of, and that every sign that comes within their knowledge, the signs of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what do? They turn away and they reject it. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ أَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ قَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَنُطْعِمُ مَنْ لَوْ يَشَاءُ اللَّهُ أَطْعَمَهُ إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. We'll inshallah look at this verse tomorrow. When the mushrikeen of Mecca, when they were told that what they used to do is they used to spare some money and they used to say this is in the path of Allah. Remember, the mushrikeen of Mecca believed in Allah. They believed in Allah, but they partnered idols with Allah. And they used those idols as wasila to reach Allah. And they were the enemies of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala classed them as rijsum min amali shaitan. They are from the shaitan, they are impurities, these idols. Anyhow, they used to separate money and say this is for Allah. Yani that was their charity. When it was said to them that you should give this that you're separating to the poor. There's poor people here, they are needy, they are thirsty, they are hungry. Why don't you give that to them? That is the work of Allah. So upon that, what they said is what is mentioned in this next verse. Inshallah, we will look at that tomorrow. صدق الله العلي العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الأمين الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم.